Chapter 47. Death to False Gods. Immediately upon the return of Cato and Maia, a council was formed to strategize the upcoming campaign to march for Doriva and secure the abandoned city in the north. The members were summoned by the king and gathered around a table at the royal library of Bor Roca. Many important matters were still left to be discussed, but the main topic for the past hour or so revolved around the sudden disappearance and equally unforeseen return of Cato and Maia. The two spoke at length about their experiences in a realm that was removed from any conventional influences of time and space, while the rest of the council listened to them in silence, only interrupting with a question on a few occasions. The seat at the head of the rectangular table was occupied by Ifra Baratok. The king looked old and tired. His eyes were sunken deep into their sockets from the worry of Cato's week-long disappearance. But seeing his grandson across the table again smeared a bright grin on his face he just wasn't able to prevent. His heavy crown of gold and titanium rested on an unruly nest of thin white hair and gleamed in the flickering light of the burning hearth at his back. He shifted his weary eyes between the young lovers and noticed the tremendous change they seemed to have undergone. Besides the obvious bliss he saw in their eyes, there was something else that caught his immediate attention. It was as Xian had already told him before the Seeker left for Vicaris. Cato's aura was no longer distinguishable from Maia's, meaning that Nia Seraphine's plan to bring them together was finally bearing fruit after having been set in motion many years ago. Ifra quickly wiped the grin from his face as he was still supposed to be infuriated with their little disappearing act. At the king's left side sat Salavor Inkarok, a tall and slender man in his late 20s who was appointed captain of the Doriva campaign. His long black hair flowed down to his waist like a waterfall in the dark of the night. He was rolling a golden coin over his knuckles with a satisfied smirk on his face. The coin was embossed with the depiction of a giant squid, or Inkar in the Malaki tongue, the insignia of his ancient clan. Cato gazed at the coin and was forced to think about Aisha, knowing that she and Salavor shared the same great-great-grandfather. He once heard from second-hand accounts that Salavor's prowess on the battlefield supposedly rivaled that of his distant cousin, but from his own experience he only knew Sal as the filthy oddball who drunkenly introduced himself years ago at a feast by dipping a flaccid meat rod into his drink when they first met. The introduction inadvertently catapulted Cato's status in Rokan to legendary heights. It was his first visit to Malachi as an emissary of Onira, and refusing to be harassed by Salavor's unsavory gesture, he defiantly emptied the tainted wine in one go. That single act of boldness earned him the title of hero among the Malaki populace, though naturally he would rather never speak of that particular indiscretion again. And if anyone asked him why random people in the streets of Rokan would call him hero out of nowhere, he would only tell them to forget about anything they heard before resuming whatever he was doing before the interruption. His eyes widened when he felt a sudden hand on his lap, sliding toward his inner thigh and meandering dangerously close to his groin. He glanced to his side and was answered with an impassive look from Maia, but the sparkle in her eyes showed him clear mischief. The spike of excitement was instantly picked up by Marcus, who sat next to the king and opposite Salavor. His eyes were squinted and aimed at the tail end of the table, but they carried no malice whatsoever. It actually surprised him how delighted he was to see them so happy together. After Cato's speech at the feast, Marcus was immediately buried under a landslide of nobles who all wanted to congratulate him with the betrothal and to welcome him into the Malaki family. He never had the opportunity to thank Cato for the heartfelt words, and knowing himself, it would probably stay that way until the end of days. But he would always acknowledge the fact that without Cato's demands in the throne room, as well as the endorsement at the feast, he never would have been welcomed with such warmth. Not in a million years. Since the night of the betrothal feast, he had worked diligently to justify the adoration he received by studying the Malaki language and culture under the tutelage of Lady Yaliza. Progress was hilariously slow, but his unwavering display of tenacity earned him plenty of respect. He even flung himself out of his comfort zone by making a serious attempt to establish a genuine bond with his dearly betrothed. It led to many awkward situations and misunderstandings, but he persevered and was even invited to share the bed for the first time 2 nights ago. It certainly contributed to the success that he wasn't under the constant scrutiny of her father's watchful eye anymore. But even if Lord Raziel already departed for the coronation of the new Merylesian rulers, the scrutiny never really stopped. The duty was simply carried over to the general's pupil, Ramses Lobodok, who had been appointed second in command for the Doriva campaign and sat next to Marcus with a face of brooding storm clouds. It was no secret to many in Malachi that Ramses had been coveting Zazi's hand for a while. However, she never reciprocated, and his presence in Rokan only seemed to accelerate the inevitable formation of the Ragnarok clan. Ramses even asked permission from his mentor to challenge Marcus for the hand of Zazi, but Raziel, having gone through a similar experience in the past and dearly paid for it with his left eye, refused and said that love simply wasn't worth dying for. The denial brought Ramses shame and damaged his standing, but it was his mentor's lack of belief in a victorious outcome that truly crushed his spirit. Marcus overheard the request with his keen Gorovi senses and took it upon himself to offer Ramses the duel he had been aching for. It was intended as a gesture in good faith, to allow Ramses a chance at redemption, but instead his proposal was taken as a grave insult. A few days ago, Marcus said, "Si sene wohalar," to Ramses in front of a noble crowd. He was so proud of his pronunciation, which was indeed immaculate, and looked over his shoulder with a beaming grin to thank his betrothed for the words she taught him. But if his intention was to call Ramses valiant and not ugly, he should have said "Si sene wokhara" instead. Of course, boldness had been highly valued in the Malaki culture since the birth of the nation, but the territory between boldness and rudeness was only separated by a very flimsy border. Even though Ramses himself wasn't able to appreciate the unintentional insult, the surrounding crowd of nobles responded with cheers, roars, chants, and laughter. No one told Marcus that he had misspoken, and he never understood why Ramses kept staring at him with ill wishes after that instance. Even now, the set of eyes to his right burned through him with malicious intentions, but he didn't feel intimidated by it in the slightest. After all, he did offer Ramses an opportunity to regain the honor that was perceived to be lost, and he didn't do so with the expectation of getting defeated. He simply wanted to give Ramses a chance to lose the battle for Zazi's hand with dignity. There were only a couple of people in the entire realm that could possibly intimidate him, or so he thought when he left Mengarovi a few weeks ago. But since arriving in Rokan, he was forced to add 3 more names to that list. The first one had already left for Moralis, and he thanked the holy goddess for that stroke of fortune. The second was seated at the head of the table and had other concerns than to mind him at all. The last person on the list was seated between Salavor Inkarok and Cato Knight. Marcus glanced across the table and unintentionally kept his eyes for too long on a neatly dressed, pubescent boy whose presence seemed to be completely out of place.
"Is there something you wanted to say?"
the youngster asked with an expression on his face that was far too condescending for someone his age. He barely looked old enough to walk around on his own without parental guidance, a fact that was emphasized by the clusters of freckles splattered across his youthful cheeks like constellations in the nocturnal sky, but spoke with knowledge on many subjects that would have taken anyone decades of study to achieve. The boy apparently preferred to keep his public appearances brief, and was the only lord at the feast who immediately left after dinner, citing that it was way past his bedtime.
"Nothing in particular, Lord Damau,"
Marcus muttered and quickly averted his eyes. But the youngster was a cold-blooded predator that refused to let go of a prey once his sights were set.
"I do have a question for you, Lord Damau,"
Maya said in her brother's stead. She immediately felt a set of fingers digging into her thighs with great urgency as if to stop her from running off a cliff, but she dismissed Cato's warning with a lazy brush of her hand.
"I do hope you will not be offended by it, however."
The boy slowly slid his eyes to the left.
"Lady Maya,
He said, and promptly lit up a smile that spanned from ear to ear.
I believe we haven't had the chance to properly exchange pleasantries yet, so please allow me the opportunity to say that I am greatly honored to be graced by the presence of a Seraphine. I've heard the rumors, but I am relieved to say that I can now confidently label them as false. Your beauty, in fact, exceeds that of even your mother. Go on, dear, I insist. No question could ever offend me."
Maya raised an eyebrow, but quickly topped it off with a charming smile of her own. The compliment was cute and all, but she only heard a challenge at the end of the sentence.
I am told you are the chief scientist of Malachi and have been so for the past few decades. But if that is true, then why do you look like a boy of 14? Do you not age?
I can tell you are being polite, my lady. This body is only 12 years old. Like everyone else, I too am subjected to the cruelty of time. I have only found a way to outstay my welcome. What you are looking at is in fact my fourth skin. My appearance may seem young, but I have lived for 156 years already.
Maya shuddered and seemed to be physically revolted by Damao's choice of words, but her curiosity proved to be far too great to withhold further questions from being asked.
With all due respect, you look so innocuous and helpless. Couldn't you have picked a more capable skin to wear?
Damao chewed his tongue and crossed his arms, not having expected this level of bluntness coming out of such a pretty face. His eyes were lowered to the table and he looked genuinely downcast.
I thought no question could ever offend you, my lord. Please forgive me if I misunderstood that statement.
Unfortunately, my previous vessel perished before the replacement was ready.
We are straying too far off topic.
Ifra sharply interceded before Maya had the chance to respond.
There is much to discuss and none of us is getting any younger.
Perhaps if Lord Damao changes into his fifth skin, at least one of us will,
Cato said, but the joke was only appreciated by Maya and Salivor.
Save your wits, Dombini. I believe there was something you wanted to show us.
The king said in a flat voice and spread his hands across the table.
Right.
Cato stood up from his seat and walked over to the mantelpiece to grab something out of one of his cloak's pockets.
I had forgotten all about it until I washed my clothes this morning.
He returned with a folded sheet of paper in his hand and flattened it on the table for all to see.
Oh, wow!
Salivor exclaimed in excitement.
I can see why you would be proud to show this to your pappy, KK. This is very pretty indeed. Did you make it all by yourself?
He bent over the table to get a closer look at the note that was marred with crude drawings of stick figures, all of which having either uncannily circular breasts or disproportionately large penises. Some figures were even given both. His eyes rapidly swerved from side to side before he licked his lips and rubbed a hand over his stubbled chin. He then slumped back into his chair, lighting up a pipe he took out of his robe. A steady stream of smoke left his nostrils and landed on the table like a layer of mist.
This is unsettling, Lord Cato.
His voice became gravely serious all of the sudden. Ramses snatched the sheet of paper from the table and glanced over the writings. He ignored the childish drawings and began to read the words out loud.
I don't understand,
He then said and scratched his ear.
Is this an excerpt from some kind of novel?
Typical.
Salivor said.
You look, but you don't see.
He used the stem of his pipe to point at the breasts and penises that were encircling specific letters and fragments of words.
Yes, Sal. Tits and cocks. Your favourite breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Salivor scoffed but made no effort to deny it.
How did you ever become Razzy's pupil? Or does he only accept idiots who see as little as he does? This work of art clearly contains a hidden message.
I am impressed you managed to decipher it within a single glance.
Cato said and made a pincering motion with his hand.
Impressed, sure.
Salivor took a few short drags from his pipe before handing it over to Cato.
But are you surprised?
Can someone please explain to me what the message is already?
Ramses grumbled. Cato took a long drag and mellowed into his seat with a sigh, clouding the library with thick, herbal smoke.
Just read the encircled letters.
Ramses responded with a guttural sound and felt like a fool for following Cato's instruction, but nevertheless he did trace the letters and chunks of words that were isolated within the breasts and penises.
Deyit ha tu fahal se go.
Ramses leaned back into his seat and crossed his arms.
Death to false gods. Now what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Who is this message even meant for?
The false gods part, that's up for debate. Could mean everyone who received the blessing, or perhaps even the heirs of Ava and Nyx themselves. But it could just as well mean the leaders of the 7 nations.
Cato took another lengthy drag from the pipe and really seemed to enjoy Salivor's choice combination of herbs.
As for your second question, We found this note in Saraki's war room, and I know for a fact that he was working together with Jackdaw Blackshaw, who also happened to be in Deriva when we were there.
That's not possible.
Ifra said and brought out a pipe of his own. He put the stem against his lips and slid his eyes to Salivor. The captain lit up the chamber of the pipe with the flick of a single finger. It seemed like an insignificant gesture, but that slightest of movements was in fact a demonstration of his auric finesse. To cast a flame with such accuracy and subtlety required an absolute mastery of aura. Salivor noticed he was being studied and sent Cato a wink.
Jackdaw was present at Queen Rose's wake for the entirety of 3 days. There is no possibility he slipped away during that time. Our spies already confirmed his attendance.
I know what I saw,
Cato said confidently.
I don't think it was meant for Jackdaw,
Marcus said.
The 6 riders I encountered were discussing the delivery of something they called the conduit to Saraki. I think this message is addressed to them.
And by conduit, they must have meant Taimujin Sivalok, right?
Maya asked, but didn't even need to hear a confirmation.
We saw a wanted poster from a merchant we came across in the Doran. How did someone like Taimujin Sivalok become an enemy of the realm?
The king sighed and stood up to shuffle the cinders in the hearth with a poker.
Over a month ago,
He said, staring into the reignited fireplace.
Jin collaborated with 5 highly skilled individuals to free a dangerous criminal from captivity. In a single night, the 6 of them managed to slaughter over 300 elite guards of Iskandir.
Maya flinched.
Impossible!
She blurted out in shock, because it really shouldn't have been possible. Iskandir was an impenetrable fortress on a small volcanic island to the north of Malakai. It was surrounded by strong, treacherous currents of a hostile sea that stretched beyond the horizon in every direction. Similar to Ethelwum, Iskandir was governed by a council that acted independently from the 7 sovereign nations. Both facilities were highly respected for their contributions to the realm, but unlike the academy to the far west that produced leaders for the future, Iskandir was a prison that harboured Aidin's most dangerous criminals and was guarded by a permanent garrison of elite warriors. In its long and fabled history, many attempts had been made to extract captives from the unconquerable walls of Iskandir, but none ever ended in success.
Taimujin Sivalok is capable of terrifying things,
The king said solemnly.
depending on the people he surrounds himself with. I dare say he is even the most dangerous individual in all of Aidin.
Who are they after?
Marcus gnashed his teeth and cast a glance at Cato, who displayed the same dismay on his face. 2 of their former classmates were on the council of the fortress prison, which meant that they either colluded with Jin or they had been killed.
According to a handful of survivors, every member of the council has been murdered. Jin recruited every prisoner who was willing to swear fealty to him, and those who refused were executed in cold blood.
Ifra sat back down, took a few short puffs from his pipe, and passed it on to Marcus, who at first wanted to refuse, but then graciously accepted after hearing a faint whisper from Cato telling him to take it.
But as stated by one of the guards in his dying breath, Jin and his comrades were specifically targeting the liberation of a Kyoguni scientist called Mura Isihiro. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because he is single-handedly responsible for the death of over 50,000 people years ago.
Marcus cast another glance at Cato, but was only answered with a troubled frown.
He was my partner a long time ago.
Damao said, waving a hand in front of his face to clear the curtain of smoke.
In the past, we have worked together on experimentations to create synthetic life forms, but we ultimately parted ways due to a clash of philosophies. His tasteless creations were an assault on the beauty and purity of my noble studies.
He paused and brushed a hand over the head of Ollie, who had leaped onto his lap a short while ago.
I do believe you have met him and one of his creations in the desert, Lord Marcus.
The creature, maybe, but none of the people I came across had the appearance of a Kyoguni.
Marcus said with his eyes squinted. He couldn't shake off the unease when talking to the Malaki scientist who had the appearance of a witless kid. Damao chuckled and handed the creamed-coloured cat to Cato.
Mura Isihiro was taken to Iskandir because death was simply too merciful for someone like him. The realm wanted him to suffer for his atrocious crimes against humanity. They removed his senses by mutilating his eyes, ears, nose, and tongue so that he would only have his thoughts to keep him company. They hacked off his arms so that he would never be able to create again. They reduced his legs slice by slice like ham and force-fed it back to him. He was carefully kept alive and made sure that every second of his life went by with intense suffering.
Damao paused and raised an eyebrow.
Really? This doesn't sound familiar to you?
Again, and with or without limbs. I have met no Kyoguni.
Damao shrugged.
If you say so, tell me, what do you know about the 6 riders you encountered?
He asked and turned to his left.
Care to enlighten us, Lord Cato? I heard you have become a historian of great renown nowadays. Could it be that you have absorbed the knowledge of Ivy Greyleaf?
Cato instantly stopped petting Ollie and looked up with an icy stare.
Do not compare me to that plagiarizing fraud, and I will not compare you to a real scientist like Ayla Hollowind.
He handed Ollie over to Maya and returned the pipe to Salivor. He straightened his back like Flint Whitelake and started tapping his fingers on the table like Minari Oni-Yume.
Esau Hilarinok, known as the Midnight Eclipse, was a seeker from Seralox, born in the year of...
Briefly, Dombini, we don't have all night.
The king interrupted, somewhat agitated.
Thank you.
Marcus said and took a timid drag from Ephra's pipe. He had never smoked before and felt an immediate urge to cough his lungs out. Cato sucked his teeth and leaned back into his chair with his arms folded.
No respect for scholars,
he mumbled, and was supported with a nod from Damao. He glanced to his side, but noticed that even Maya stared back at him with annoyance.
Fine,
He began again.
Esau Hilarinok, a seeker with telepathic abilities. He went rogue at the start of the Great War, fought for both sides as a mercenary, and eventually died on his quest for glory. Ilandra Aurealis, also called the Witch. She is the daughter of the former Grandmaster of Aspera, Lord Araxis, and renowned for many abilities that earned her the moniker. But she is probably most feared for her ability to take on the appearance of her past victims. Supposedly, Ilandra vanished without a trace at the end of the Great War. Ilio Villavaldia. I don't know much about him in particular, but his family is famed for an auric technique called the Eye of the Void. The Villavaldia clan was tasked with ending the Great War by opening a portal directly to the Great Hall of Ashencat and assassinating Grandmaster Aemon and the Council of Masters. The plan, however, failed spectacularly as they were awaited by Marshal Bloodthorn and a dozen of his kin. We all know how that played out, as the Villavaldia clan is now extinct. Evandor Nostrum, the Dreamwalker, was the chief advisor to King Sol VI of Raconia. He possessed the ability to communicate through dreams and influence...
Cato stopped tapping his fingers on the table and turned to Marcus. He then snickered and continued.
Somewhere along the way, he must have walked into the wrong dream, because he supposedly died in his sleep at the tail end of the Great War. Valise Everlong, called the Red Bird by Saraki of the Sand, is completely unknown to me. We assume that she is the daughter of Cain Everlong, but can't confirm that as fact just yet. She possesses many strange techniques that I have never heard of before, and seems to be of great importance to their cause, whatever it may be. Vlak.
Cato stopped tapping his fingers on the table and turned to Marcus.
Are you sure that's his name?
Marcus grunted.
That's how he introduced himself anyway.
Do you recall what he looked like?
More beast than human.
Marcus said and shuddered at the thought, which in turn seemed to amuse Cato quite a bit.
His arms were long and muscular, similar to those of a simian. He had a broad torso and short, stumpy legs. His dome was a network of throbbing veins, and his mouth was equipped with long black teeth like the spines of a sea urchin.
So he's an ape with dental problems,
Ramses said half-jokingly.
As are you.
Salivor joked along.
I do believe you are leaving out the most crucial part of the description, Lord Marcus.
Damao said and rose from his seat with an arched back. Marcus bit his lip and snarled.
Yes, he did have a large protrusion on his back.
Large enough to be a human torso, you reckon?
Wait a minute.
Maya said, gently cradling Ollie inside her arms like a precious newborn.
Are you saying that this Vlak character was carrying Mura Isihiro on his back all this time?
Not exactly. Besides being a brilliant scientist with a very childish vision, Mura has the ability to establish a link with his creations that allows him to control them. Mura the parasite was effectively riding Vlak like a horse. Now, who can tell me what the 6 riders have in common?
Damao put his palms on the table and stared at Cato with challenging eyes.
Cain Everlong.
The king answered instead.
I hate to spoil your fun, Lord Damao, but this is taking far too long for my liking. Mura was Cain's teacher at Ethelwomb. Ilio was Cain's classmate. Ilandra was Cain's love interest at one point in time, and perhaps even still is. Esau and Ivandor were supposedly killed by Cain during the Great War. Valis may very well be Cain's daughter, but it's worth mentioning that the founding member of the Everlong clan was also called Valis. It is true that Val-Ease literally translates to red bird in modern Malak, but back in the days of Dor, it also bore the meaning of phoenix. It's quite possible that we are dealing with someone who is supposed to be dead for hundreds of years somehow.
Well then,
Damao abruptly distanced himself from the table.
Good night.
He said without explaining himself any further and turned around to head for the exit. Everyone watched his departure without saying a word.
Our top priority is to secure Doriva.
Cato said after a short silence, not one to lament Damao's departure.
That shithole is far too important to be left abandoned.
Yup, already on it. Nothing for you to worry about, KK.
Salavor said, and started rolling the golden coin over his knuckles again.
Meaning?
While you were gone, your Grand Master already agreed to our king's proposal and promised to support the joint operation with 2,000 soldiers under the command of Mason Bloodthorn.
Uncle Mace?
Maya asked in surprise. Marcus nodded solemnly.
The power of a Garovi is needed to break the barrier that seals the passage between Aedin and the Northern Realm, assuming it's made from the same material that Valis used in our fight.
The Oneran army has already started marching on the first day of winter and is expected to arrive at the gate of Doriva in 2 weeks.
Salavor continued.
I will head out with my troops in 4 days at dawn and meet them there.
2 weeks?
Cato asked and firmly planted his palms on the table.
No, that won't do. It's been 3 weeks since we left Doriva. Many things could have happened in the meantime. Wait 2 more weeks and 5 weeks will have passed in total, providing them plenty of time to replenish the garrison.
Salavor shrugged.
What can we do about it? That's as fast as an army that size can move. And if they somehow refilled the garrison, our scouts would have sent word already.
Then why are we sending an army with the combined strength of 4,000 soldiers to capture a city that's empty anyway?
Maya asked.
Because our sight isn't solely set on Doriva.
The king answered solemnly.
Once we secure the city and the passage, we will march for Meralis with reinforcements from Aespira, Ludor, Raconia, and Kyogun.
What?
Cato shot up from his seat and demanded an explanation.
Raven and Rain will be there!
And they couldn't be in better hands.
Ephra calmly responded. His words left his lips in thick puffs of smoke.
The coronation will be a gathering of the realm's strongest warriors.
And why is every goddamn nation sending their troops to Meralis? For fuck's sake, that's a declaration of war!
Surely someone with your intelligence didn't think the likes of Asia Celestine, Mycon Bloodthorn, and Raziel Montarock were sent to Vicaris for their diplomatic competence, did you? We are carrying out justice. The murder of a queen cannot go unpunished. Rosales Whiteshade was barely 50, but looked fragile enough to be my great-grandmother. It's no coincidence she became sick shortly after the appointment of her mysterious chief advisor 5 years ago. Her death was a carefully calculated plot to remove her from the throne.
He paused and took a long drag from his pipe.
6 months ago, I, as well as every other leader of Aedin, received a letter that was delivered in utmost secrecy. In that letter, Queen Rosa stated that she probably had less than a month to live. She named her chief advisor and her only remaining child as the ones who were scheming to kill her. She begged us to seek justice in the event of her death, and the 6 sovereign nations of Aden agreed to it unanimously. We will make sure Slackjaw Jackdaw and Willow the Whisperer never get to besmirch her throne with their filth.
It remained eerily quiet for a while. Only Ollie licking his paws seemed to undo the complete silence.
Who then will claim the crown?
Maya finally asked, absently brushing the cat on her lap. Aoife gave her a smile and slumped into his seat.
Fortunately, not everyone in Meralis is happy with the ascension of King Jackdaw and Queen Willow. In fact, I wager that a civil war would have broken out sooner or later, with or without outside interference. Some among their hierarchy suspect foul play was involved and reached out for assistance. Lord Caius has already made contact with someone within the ranks of Meralis who is willing to lead an insurrection from the inside.
Lord Caius?
Cato said and scoffed, not having thought of that name in a good while.
You may not like him, Dombini.
On the contrary,
Cato sharply cut off the king with a sneer.
I actually like him a great deal. He is an interesting character, as well as a delightful conversation partner. I simply don't trust him.
Then trust your Grand Master. Can you do that, or have you changed so much now that you have outgrown even his judgment?
Cato shied away from Aoife's cold, glassy eyes and folded his arms.
Who will lead the Merylesian insurrection?
He muttered.
Someone who recognizes that the late queen died under questionable circumstances and hasn't forgotten about the mysterious disappearance of 220 Merylesians. A dragon with considerable influence among her peers who goes by the name of Marlin Goldwing.
Lynn?
Cato bounced back in shock from hearing his sister's name so unexpectedly. He smiled for a brief moment, but almost immediately struggled to fight back his tears when he realized that he wasn't Aunt Goldwing.
You know her?
Aoife asked in surprise.
I do.
Then tell me, do you still doubt this appointment?
Cato shook his head and rubbed his eyes in silence.
Good,
Aoife said.
In any case, she has no ambitions to sit on the throne. Instead, she wants to establish a council and vote on a ruler, similar to the way things are done in Ispira and Onira. But first things first, we will need to secure Doreva before we are allowed to set our sights on Meralis. If Jackdaw is indeed allied with Saraki and Cain, he may yet receive reinforcements from the north. We don't know how strong their combined forces are, but if we gain control over the passage, we at least decide the flow of their potential troops. Though, of course, there is one caveat we cannot overlook.
The Eye of the Void.
Marcus said thoughtfully.
Exactly. We don't know the full extent of that technique, but with someone like Taimujin Sivalok, who could amplify the strength of auric abilities, at their side we have to prepare for the worst. Thousands of soldiers could enter the realm at a moment's notice, and we can't allow ourselves to be caught off guard.
I will survey the city before our armies arrive at the gate,
Cato said.
If Ilio or any other of Cain's lackeys will be there, I take them out then and there. Perhaps I can even learn something from their deaths.
He briefly glanced at Marcus and turned back to the king for a reaction. Aoife clearly disagreed with the suggestion, but knew that he didn't have any authority to stop Cato.
Sal, take 2 of your strongest and join Lord Cato on his foolish endeavor. Make sure he doesn't come up with any other heroics.
Salavor complied with a courteous nod and waved over a young guard who stood by the entrance. He scribbled something on a handkerchief and put it in the guard's breast pocket.
Give it to Sandal and Nazari. Tell them to be ready at dawn,
he said and sent off the young man.
If the situation gets too risky, I can bring everyone back to safety,
Maya said assuredly. The king leaned forward, resting his chin on a pillow of bony knuckles.
Your technique? Is it comparable to the Eye of the Void?
I have never seen the Villa Valdia technique with my own eyes, so I can't say for certain. However, I do not cast black ovals. Forgive me for not knowing the science behind it, Your Majesty. I simply do what feels natural.
There is no need for apologies or formalities.
Ephra said and retreated to his thoughts for a short moment.
What are the limitations of your technique? Can you send anyone anywhere across the realm?
Maya twisted her lips and stared at the ceiling.
I think of a place I know and just wish myself or whoever to be there. So I guess my answer is yes, but only within the confines of my own imagination. For example, I wouldn't be able to send anyone to Moralis because I myself have never been there before.
But can you, in theory, send anyone to Onira? Or perhaps Doriva?
Probably.
She answered unconvincingly.
It would require a massive amount of aura, but in theory, I think it should be possible. I have to admit that I have never travelled such a long distance using my technique before.
We are not using her technique to travel to Doriva,
Cato said.
Without knowing the situation over there, it's far too dangerous to risk such a course.
I never said you should.
Ephra said.
But if you encounter Esau Heleranok by any chance, I want Maya to send him to my throne room.
Why?
Cato asked before Maya could. The king held his cold stare on his grandson and somehow seemed to begrudge the question.
Because Esau Heleranok betrayed Adam Baratok and Nera Everlong by revealing their secret hideout to Cain. They died because of him.
Maya solemnly nodded. Ever since the recent events that took place in her private paradise, she had felt the presence of Nera Everlong all around her. And right now, the presence was like a blazing fury of black flames. She glanced to her side and saw that Cato was gritting his teeth. However, his anger paled in comparison to the unholy wrath that was displayed on the old king's face. As bitter as Maya was for the loss of her mother's soulmate, no one deserved revenge more than Ephra Baratok, who lost his son, daughter-in-law, and grandson due to Esau's betrayal.
Thank you,
the king said in a fragile voice, and was answered with a sympathetic smile. Salavor flipped his coin in the air and landed it on the tip of his finger while pointing at Ramses.
You will be the one to lead our army and meet up with the Onirans, Rami. Are you up for it?
Ramses snickered and confidently straightened his posture.
It should have been the case from the beginning anyway.
Ephra stood up from his seat.
We know what needs to be done. The face of the realm is about to change, and we all have our roles to play. Trust in each other's capability and focus on your own tasks. Believe that what we are doing will contribute to a better tomorrow. We are in this together.
Wait a minute.
Marcus said as the king was already heading toward the exit.
So what's my role then?
Ephra stopped and cupped his chin without turning around.
I do believe you have a session with Lady Yaliza tomorrow at noon. If I'm not mistaken, she has prepared a tutorial on the cultural differences between Malawi and Kainox. Should be exciting.
He cackled and mumbled something in the Malaki tongue before continuing his slow gait to the door. Salavor and Ramses also removed themselves from the table and took a spot in front of the fireplace to continue discussing the army's approach in private.
That's it?
Marcus asked in bewilderment.
You have a Gorovi at your disposal in dire times and you have him study anthropology or some shit?
The king ignored the complaint and left the library. Ollie promptly leaped from Maya's arms and swaggered behind the old man. Cato slowly bent over the table to reclaim the crumpled sheet of paper.
Why are you even surprised? It's nothing personal. You are simply not allowed to die before you squirt out a son. That is the role you auditioned for, so accept the fact that you are nothing but a glorified stud until you deliver him his great-grandson. Not to pressure you or anything, but the entire future of Malachi depends on your affairs with Zazie. The thought of your seed stains his mind, my friend.
Mala mala!
Marcus exclaimed in disgust.
You really are a goddamn wordsmith, Shobin Dol Shazir. Why didn't you claim the throne for yourself?
Cato laughed and saw from the corner of his eye that even Salavor and Ramses fell silent to stare at him.
Because the union of Onira and Malachi is more important to the realm.
Marcus scoffed.
Is that why you disappeared from the balcony? Raven told me you looked downright miserable after you gave your speech. Do you regret your decision?
Cato's smile flattened to a straight line.
In a single day, I was told the identities of my parents, only to discover directly afterward that they had already passed. I learned that my mother sacrificed herself to prevent my uncle from claiming the undivided power of Deceiver. My father died because he would rather be with his wife in death than to be alive without her. I learned that I was put in an orphanage, stripped from my heritage, because that was the only way to keep me safe. I learned that I have been the grandson of Grandmaster Aemon and King Ephra this entire time. And not only did they know, they actively worked to keep that knowledge away from me. When I entered the dining hall the other day, I could only see a different version of myself sitting at the large circular table, smiling and laughing, surrounded by a loving family.
His lips curled back into a smile, but his eyes never followed.
Do I regret my decision? No, not at all. This is the best life Cato of Moonshield could possibly dream of. Cato Baratok will always remain an illusion that was simply never meant to be.
I'm sorry.
Marcus said quietly with his head lowered.
Don't say sorry unless you have...
I'm sorry for all the times I've called you the Lord of Nothing. I know I haven't always been the friend you needed me to be.
Marcus glanced at his sister and sent her a quick smile before he turned back to Cato.
Should you change your mind, know that I would gladly bend my knee to you.
You have nothing to worry about. Kingship doesn't suit me, so do not think for even a second you can escape your destiny, Marcus Ragnarok.
Cato rose from his seat and extended his hand with a genuine smile on his face.
Let's just make sure Pappy doesn't die before your son comes of age, shall we?
Marcus stood up and accepted the hand with a laugh that surprised even himself.
You have changed, my friend.
He shifted his eyes to Maya once again, but this time decided to keep it there.
I'm happy for you.